Those are my words exactly. In the Morelos Mountains, campesinos are planting their fields, where the ghost of Zapata rides a horse that can still outrun the wheel. High in the sky above and clear outside is the free Mexican Air Force flying tonight. Well, there in Kentucky, a cowgirl is while we smoking colitas, federales are loading their guns, blowing smoke from their 6-shooters, spinning their barrels for fun. Contrabandistas, banditos of light, we're the free Mexican Air Force and we're flying tonight. And high in the hills we are harvesting sweet Sansamia. The law wants it all because they think the one we can free us. Freedom for us is a prison for the rulers of might. That's why the free Mexican Air Force, Mescalito riding his white horse. The free Mexican Air Force is flying tonight. Everybody flying so high. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Flying tonight.
It's AKA Toker too. You know I had to drop a track for my boy.
Where you at?
Yeah, been the harassing boys out here telling favors. I'm the hardest young nigga, I ain't signed to no label. Hey, Bruce Gas putting no fights on the tape. Calling that Boston since Kane versus Abel. Smoking so much gas, you would think that shit was fatal. The people's champion like Muhammad Ali. Shout out Bruce Gas, one day we gon' meet. Yeah, we gon' blow it down, we gon' smoke a hella weed. Yeah, we gon' blow it down, take a hit out the Toker too. Slipping hella shots, feel like Tyson with the people. Little Glock on my side, but it hit just like Isaac Cruz. Shout man, chat real shit, that's my fucking dude. We always cooking on the pan. Straps on my side, I ain't talking about no sand. Bruce pass me the blunt, I'ma light it like a candle. Hey, non-stop bars, man, I always spit flames. Bruce Gas always got a different strain. Bitch, you ain't like me, you can never feel my pain. You win and you lose, well, this the fight game. Don't beef on the net and the shit won't change. Said that on the stream, gotta do it for the game. Said that on the stream, gotta do it for the chat. I ain't undisputed. Yeah, hold on, I ain't undisputed, but I want all the straps.
Salute everybody, man. Thank you so much for coming in from the bottom of my heart. We had a little bit of technical snafus here. I didn't quite get the emails out right, and you know how it goes over here on YouTube, man. But I had a feeling in my heart everything was going to come together. And man, I see somebody just snuck in the back door over here, man. I just met this guy today, but I feel like I met him over 30 years ago, bro. And if you don't know who he is, bro, you don't know boxing. But I'm sure you know the opponent that he had in one of the most controversial fights in boxing history. Anyway, man, I'm gonna get him in here. I'm gonna shout you all out in a second. I thank you so much for coming in here. But anyway, this is my friend, man. This is Dave Tiberi. Dave, salute my brother.
Salute. How are you, Bruce?
Man, I've been looking so forward to this, bro. And every time I drop your name, everybody says Dave Tiberi, bro. He had they're starting telling me your story, and I'm saying, yeah, man. I mean, bro, I'm going to shout the people that came in here for a second, man, and then I want them to just give you a little brief synopsis on who you are, in case anybody in here has been sleeping under a rock. But anyway, man, I get MP. What the fuck? Salute my brother, Jose Diaz. Thank you for coming in, man. Andrew Charles, appreciate it. William Old School on that. Manny, my brother Manny El Vivo, thank you, my brother, for coming in, man. I'll mention you up in a second if I haven't already, man. Jose Diaz, I called you out. Skywalker Tim Lucy, bro, my brother Skywalker, he's the nephew of Bobby Chacon. But we got some people in here who know boxing, bro. He's just another one of them in here. Oscar Prince Wu-Tang, salute to you. Andrew Charles. Iceman, the man who wrote my opening song. I say co-wrote because I kind of gave him I put a buzz in his ear. Anyway, man, thanks, Iceman. Thanks for coming in. Derek Clark, bro, thank you for coming in. Cali X Boxing, another one of my brothers, man. Peace and thank you for coming in. And of course, Trick Nolte's in here too, bro. Dave, why don't you? Is that music not too loud for you? Is it, man?
Oh, it's fine.
I always kind of have to have something to bop to. I'm from that generation, bro. Well, why don't you do me a favor, man? Introduce yourself to the people out here. I got some good boxing people out here, bro.
Oh, right. Name's Dave Tiberi. Fought in the amateurs. Grew up with in my early amateur days. Grew up with 6 other brothers that were boxers. There's 14 of us in a family. We had 12 boys and 2 girls. And people said, "How'd you get into boxing?" I said, "Well, I was the 12th child. I was the 12th boy." So I had 3 other brothers that fought professional. And then after my amateur career in 1985, I left after 1 year of college and turned professional, and went into the professional ranks, training in New Jersey. And then by the early 80s, I switched to back to Philadelphia, training in Philadelphia at the legendary Champs Gym, and gave me a great opportunity through my ministry and everything else, and getting my mind straight and everything else. My career skyrocketed.
I'll tell you, man. You know what everybody wants to ask you in here, don't you, man? I mean,
I have a feeling.
I mean, duh. I mean, bro. And you've been so out of the scene. I've been reading the boxing mags for a long time, and man, I bought yours, and I think they started talking about the fight in maybe July of '92. You know how they were always 3 months behind. But you never came out. You never talked about this until just recently. I read a couple of interviews. But why don't we go from square one? You know, people, man, I don't even want to put words that I can't put into you. Tell us how that fight came about, and tell us the fights that you turned down to get to that fight.
So it was we were coming off. I'll start by saying our camp because as an individual, it's just really putting yourself around good people. So when I went to Philadelphia, transition from Jersey to New Jersey, Philadelphia, we made a commitment to each other, a number of us fighters, that we were going to help each other up. And every fighter that made that commitment, we ended up together at their champs gym. And each one of us, even though we after our fights we retired, we always came back and supported each other. The other fighters in that camp to really, I think, really catapult my career as well was Prince Charles Williams, the light heavyweight champion, Robert Bam Bam Hines, junior middleweight, ended up winning the junior middleweight title. Uh, Stevie Little upset Michael Nunn for the super middleweight title, and of course Bernard Hopkins. And the reason I bring those names up all the time is because I find that those individuals would help me between the word and those guys. It created an opportunity for me to fight the best in the world. And camp was so hard that fights became fun. And when you're in a camp with guys like Hopkins and Prince Charles Williams and Stevie Little, these guys, and Marvis Frazier, Tyrone Frazier, these guys are just really dedicated guys that gave their all. And when you put your time in and you get ready for the fight becomes more enjoyable. You're more relaxed because camp was just so hard. So yeah, so back in 1991, after a series of wins, I created a fight that I got an opportunity to fight Eddie Hall, who scored a big upset victory over Iran Barkley. And I stopped Eddie Hall in 4 rounds for the IBC super middleweight title. And then immediately the rumbling started, and we were getting first. We got what was humbling because I was big fans of Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran. And so when you look at the rankings, there's a bunch of us in the rankings that were like 25 and 30. But then
hang. Your voice is sounding choppy a little bit, Dave. And I know you're freezing up. Maybe if you went back out and came back in, we get a better connection. Want to try doing that? Go ahead. No. Yeah. Well, talk for a little bit. Let me see if it's your mic.
All right. Am I all right?
No, it's a little bit choppy. Like I said, yeah. Just leave the studio and come back again. Let's see if we get a better connection. Okay, my man.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man. We'll be right back because I don't know, man. I hope it was choppy for you guys. It was choppy for me, and I want to get this perfect because, man, this guy is going to lay some jewels upon us over here, man. And he'll be right back in here, man. Let me see if anybody came in that I didn't shout out, man. Now you're talking 2D TV. Salute, man. Salute. All right, man.
Is that better?
Yes, it is, bro. Yes, it is.
All right,
100% better. All right, man. Let's go back a couple of paragraphs.
All right. Was where I left off was with the, I guess, training camp with the I was blessed to be in with some great fighters to prepare me for the fights. So I could did I leave off there? Do you know?
Yeah, no, it's sounding good. Okay, now the fighters you train with, Prince Charles Williams, B Hop, Stevie Littles. I mean, you had some killers in that camp.
Yeah, we had Bam Bam Hines.
Bam Bam Hines. How did you get that title shot? How were you elevated to a shot with James Toney, who just came off?
What happened was we were getting opportunities. Like, for example, we had a tremendous camp. In camp, promoters, managers would reach out to us, and we would all the fighters that I just mentioned. We would all get each other ready for fights, and then opportunity arose with Eddie Hall. Eddie Hall, I think, scored a victory over Iran Barkley and a couple other top names. So I fought Eddie Hall for the IBC, the International Boxing Council super middleweight title, and stopped him in 4 rounds. And it opened a door for a number of fighters. We were immediately offered Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, and those guys in a sense, they were on their way out. So I was looking forward to it because that was just a great opportunity. But then we got the offer to fight James Toney for the middleweight title, and the timing was perfect. James just signed like a 10 million, 5-fight, $10 million deal with HBO. And so I talked to Bernard Hopkins. I talked to my camp, and they were like, man, you know what, Dave, you have a rock solid chin. You have tremendous endurance. You know, he's not going to be ready for you. So my trainer, Marty Feldman, had eight champions prior to me. And so Marty said, Dave, I'm going to watch some tapes on me. He says, but what I've already seen, James is not used to backing up. And one thing, your conditioning, and we're going to fight a different fight. We're going to bully him in the ring. We're going to be throwing elbows. We're going to back him up and keep him off balance. And so we then moved to the Poconos to get ready for the fight. And Bernard Hopkins and Prince Charles, they studied tapes on James Toney, and they fought. So having guys like that at camp preparing me, by the time fight time came around, I was so prepared to do what I had to do. And I was so mentally, physically, and spiritually ready for that fight that I don't think anything could have stopped me.
All right, now you mentioned you turned down fights with Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran. I know they were in the twilight of their careers, but I mean, didn't something like say, man, I would just love to bang heads with Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard, man. I mean, that would have been a tough fight to say no to, bro. Both of those fights.
It was so hard. Well, it is a good question because when Marty Feldman sat with me and my team sat with me, we said, well, James Toney he's the fighter that's coming up. He just knocked out Mike. He just beat Mike McCullum. He knocked out Michael Nunn, and he just got the biggest honor in boxing. He got Fighter of the Year. So literally, that's why we ended up picking over the three. Out of the three, we picked Toney, and I really think it was the right fight because Toney had a tendency when he punched, he liked to punch and then relax, punch and relax. Where I had tremendous stamina, and I was the last couple of years of my career, I had tremendous momentum, so I was really peaking at the right time, and it really worked out well in the right fight with the right camp.
Let me shout out Jeff Lucietta. Let me shout out Dick Justice. Let me shout out Major Key, who's in here tonight, bro. Thank you guys for coming in here. You know, and another thing about that, man, you know, everything today is money, bro. The money that you passed up with Sugar Ray Leonard. I mean, this is before the retirement with Sugar Ray Leonard and with Duran, and what you made fighting James Toney. I mean, you wanted the killer. You didn't want the easy route. You would have made 6-7 figures if you fought the other two gentlemen. I mean, you made comparative what these guys made today. You made peanuts, brother. You fought because you're a boxer, bro.
And it disappoints me in the sport that we all love is, you know, I tell the young guys that want to get into it, I said, find the hardest gyms to go to. And if you want to take the easy route, it's a very dangerous sport to take the easy route. But I always recommend it to these young fighters that, listen, we weren't making a ton of money. Now, for a rematch with James Toney, they offered me $500,000 and 3% of pay-per-view. And the purse just kept going up the more I declined. But after the fight, a lot of people don't know that after the fight, Donald Trump was at ringside. He shut his casinos down for 6 months to boxing.
Yeah.
Senator Ross, Senator Biden, Senator McCain, they launched the investigation. Senator Bill Roth headed the subcommittee on investigations. They launched an investigation into the fight, and that's why I was standing firm. Evander Holyfield stepped up with me, but a lot of fighters didn't. Evander Holyfield said, "Yeah, we do need a national commission." I mean, he stood by the principle of it, when the investigation the U.S. Senate investigation got underway, 2 judges in the fight that awarded Toney the fight were unlicensed in New Jersey. And the only licensed
the 2 judges who scored for Toney.
Yes, that is correct. And then the referee, prior to that fight, was considered green and incompetent to do a championship. He deducted a point, and you'll get a kick out of it when you watch the video on YouTube. One of the first guys to jump in the ring with me was Bernard Hopkins. I mean, he and I live close to each other. We're like brothers, and I couldn't have picked a better friend and a better sparring partner to get ready for that fight. And so I did, and I think a lot of people have always questioned why I would turn down that kind of money, because I didn't make much in my last fight. And it was definitely one of the hardest decisions I ever made in my life, but it was the right decision. if we all just continue to let things happen and not take a stand, did it hurt me financially? Yeah, but I knew whatever I did in life, I was going to work hard to be successful. And what makes me think it's not going to happen again? So when I spoke on the Senate floor, I remember one of my comments were, right now in the sport of boxing, it's one of the greatest sports. When two men or two women get in there, there's nobody to rely on. You've got to do a job. And I said that day, on their own rules, after the after the investigation, in their own rule books, that fight should be overturned. If they let me go into the fight champion, Tony, tomorrow, and oddly enough, he and I are being inducted to the Atlantic City Hall of Fame in October, and so I always get a question.
I think you froze again on me, brother.
Sorry, Bruce, I had to hop off for a second, man. Y'all doing all right?
Oh, yeah. Dave froze there. I think you're back again.
There we are.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We were speaking on the reason that you didn't come back, and I heard that you gave the IBF an ultimatum. They were going to have to recognize you as the champ and recognize Tony as the challenger because, Congress wanted that fight overturned. The Senate wanted that fight overturned. And the IBF wouldn't budge on it. Is that the truth? Any truth to that at all?
Yeah, that is accurate, and that's documented in the during the hearings, and that they had Larry Hazard and others come up. So yeah, it was very controversial, but I just said on your own rule books, I will sign the contract tomorrow if James Toney goes in as a challenger to me. It's on their own rule book. The rule book states that the two judges were unlicensed under New Jersey Commission, and I think, guys, you know how much we all love boxing. Imagine like walking away from the favorite thing that you do. And I grew up since I was 5 years old doing it. We never had much growing up. My dad set a boxing ring in the backyard, and my brothers and I would kick each other's butt. That was our life. And when that happened, it was devastating. And I'm like, if good people don't do anything, then nothing ever gets done. And I felt like I had a chance, to change the sport. I turned down lucrative offers. I was offered Roy Jones after the fight. They were offering me all these other fights, and I said, "I'll fight." But I said, right now, what makes me think it's not going to happen again? And I for years I stood by that. And so, it's too great of a sport. We see baseball, football. We see all these other sports have national commissions that when something happens, that it gets addressed. And so the Senate stepped in and addressed it. And then the commission didn't do their job by overturning the decision on their own rule books. So that's why I took a stance. And did it hurt me financially? It sure did. But a lot of young fighters will benefit from it because 10 years later, President Clinton signed the Ali bill, which was from my fight.
Damn.
Wow.
Crazy stuff. Trick. You have any questions you want to ask Dave?
Yeah, I got a question. How you doing, Dave?
Good. How are you?
And my brother Trick Nolte, who put this all together, man. I can't thank Trick enough. I thank him all the time over the phone. He must think I'm a sap because I told him today if I had $1 million, Trick, it's going to you.
Hey, I'm trying to recover from this.
He's my brother out here, bro. And if it wasn't for Trick, Dave, I would have never met you, and we would never been out here to speak to these great people. And bro, it just does me well. It's this brotherhood of boxing that we all talk about,
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. It's a great sport.
Yeah, man, you gotta excuse my appearance, man. I just got over COVID. I ain't been in the barbershop in like 3 weeks, man. I look like somebody beat me with a tire iron, man. My hair, man. I look ridiculous, man. Man, I look ridiculous, man. But anyways, man, hey. But Dave, I got a question though, man. I talked to there's a boxing coach here in Houston named Charles Shipp. He knows you. He know a lot of people. And I was talking with him, and he had told me I'm gonna be speaking with you pretty soon. And he said, well, I don't know how true this is, but this is what he told me. That Jackie Callan, he said Jackie Callan had called, I think one of the commissions and told them, well, James Toney was getting a whole bunch of close fights that he shouldn't have got. He won the fights, but I think the fights were close. And I think she wrote a letter or something like that. He was telling me. Do you think that had an impact on the decision of the fight you had with him?
That's a good question. I've heard a lot of the same rumors, and I don't know how true they are. But I would hope not. There was something brought up in hearings about a letter that was, from his manager to the commission. I don't remember, what the letter said, but I do know that if you watch the tape, there was two gloves. There were some basic things that happened in the fight. I had two gloves that tore in the fight that the commission couldn't find after the fight, that they removed, and it was about a 5.5 minute delay, and that was the round that Bernard and I used to say, we're going to stop him in the 5th or 6th round because your momentum is going to take over. So there was a lot of controversy around it, but and by the way, I will say this, and I think every interview I always say this. I look forward to being inducted in the Hall of Fame with James Toney. He hit me with a left hook in that first round and put chills down my back. The man can punch. And I really believe for me that was probably a benefit because my trainer said don't get caught up high with him because he's dangerous, and I did exactly what I wasn't supposed to do. But from the combatant in the ring, James Toney's a warrior. James Toney, he stayed in there all 12 rounds, and no matter what I threw at him, he came back hard on me. And so, as combatants, you know what? It was one of those nights, and I thought, that. Of course, I had the victory. But to your comment and question, I heard a lot of different things during the hearings that bothered me a lot, and I would hope they aren't true because as fight fans, the fight fans always deserve the best decision because there's always another day, and so that's why when I hear things that are on the dark side, that bothers me. Because that's what I think upsets the fans more than anything else. Everybody just wants to see a great fight and a fair fight.
There you go. Yeah.
Dave, do you follow boxing today at all?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty privileged. My brother Nick is a renowned international matchmaker for a lot of major promoters. So
I've heard the name. I've heard Nick Tiberi's name mentioned. Now I know it's your brother. Damn. So what do you think of the state of boxing today?
I still believe that boxing could go to new levels if they would create a national commission. I really believe, even though we're seeing international appeal, we're seeing fighters in the top 10 from all over the world. I really believe if U.S. starts it like they do with other national sports, they start a national commission. And I've had conversations in the past about being a national commissioner. And I said, whoever it is, somebody's got to be firm and stand by the rules. And that way it separates and Trick, this leads off to your question, your comments, is if we develop a national commission, what we can then do is the national commission would send the judges and referees a couple of days before the fight. So no one knows who the judges and referees is. The promoter doesn't even know. Right. Now with local commissions, it's like promoters have leverage on what judges and referees they have at the fight, which is to me a conflict of interest.
Yes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know. So then, guys, I'm thinking another key thing in the sport of boxing would be with this national commission, it could pay for itself. If they would every pay-per-view fight and every ESPN any fight on television, and they would take 3% out and put it towards the commission, that could help for health and safety rules for the fighters. The money a friend of mine, business friend of mine, he does investments for boxers. He said, Dave, if you did what you just said, you took 3%. He said, imagine like a Mayweather fight and all that. He said, you would probably within 1 year have $100 million in an account could help fighters with disabilities. All these fighters are strong. It's not hard, but the sport does not want to change in that direction because I really believe they don't want anything to oversee them on a national level. And to me, if they do that, would be the biggest shot in the arm in boxing history. Because fighters right now have a say on who they want to fight. And to me, that's a travesty to the fans. I think the best fighters should fight each other. And a national commission could create that.
And now how about the decisions that decision that went against you, bro? How can we stop that? Like you said, the judges have to be beyond reproach, appointed days before the fight. I mean, I've heard stories where Don King is whining and dining judges, where opponents have walked into the restaurants and seen this, and it's like, whoa. But this is the reality of boxing today. Until we get some kind of a national commission overseer. I remember Senator John McCain. He wanted to do that. He didn't have anybody on the Senate floor that wanted to go with him on that. And when he died, it seemed the bill died too, because boxing, nobody appreciates boxing. Boxing is the bastard child. NBA, NFL, even golf, tennis, they're on a pedestal, but boxing, that's the dirty sport. That's the little guy that let the mafia run boxing. We don't want anything to do with boxing. It seems like boxing is in that little hole right now. It's always been there, but now with social media and everything else, what's it going to take to get people to accept boxing as a legitimate, fair sport? Because the decisions we've been seeing lately, they'll turn young fans off right away. I mean, they're as atrocious as your decision. We're seeing boxers get. I mean, just off the top of my head, the Taylor and the Catterall fight. Some people say it wasn't a robbery, but I was watching that like I did. I'm like, how can this happen? How can we watch a fight where we know who won the fight, but judges are telling us we saw the wrong fight? It's just, I don't know, man. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but
no, but you know what, gentlemen, if you think about it, we're all fight fans. I mean, we all love the sport of boxing, and when you look at a young generation that's migrated over to the UFC, there's a reason. They're seeing better structure, and people don't want to go to. You're thinking, hey, I follow this guy. My fan base was awesome. It was very diverse. It was, I would go in the inner cities. I'd do programs. I was giving a lot back, but they gave a lot back. They went to my fights and supported me. And so when these fans come to a fight and they're dropping $50, $100 for a ticket, and then they feel like, wait a minute, what kind of sport is this? If you see that in the NFL, the football, you notice the referees and everybody else is separate. You don't see the whining and dining of owners with the referees and others. It's just not going to be acceptable. Matter of fact, I'm sure there's under the NFL and in the National Basketball League, these organizations, I'm sure, they have rules. If you went online and punched up the rule books, they have rules on that you're not allowed to socialize, and there's a separation there.
And matter of fact, I'm gonna back on something you said. And I'm gonna get off topic for a second. I was watching a documentary on a gangster named Nicky Barnes, and every time he would get in trouble or something, or somebody in his group would get in trouble for killing somebody. When it's time to testify in court, the witness always comes up missing, dead, or it comes up missing or dead or whatever. So when I think it went to the feds, what they did was they kind of like what you were saying. They went and took people to put people in the room. They didn't know who was going to be on the not witness stand, but they didn't know who was going to be on the jury. They couldn't. That way he couldn't do like witness intimidation. But yeah, I think they should do something like that. Based on that trial, what they should do in boxing, like, hey, like we don't know who the judges are going to be until the night of the fight, because a lot of times, these promoters have these judges in their pockets. As a matter of fact, I was speaking with Reggie Johnson, and Reggie told me when he was down there in Argentina about to fight Castro, he said he got up looking for his manager, Carl King. He said Carl King was in a restaurant around the corner having breakfast with Castro's team.
Wow. That's painful. It's even painful to hear, because I've seen it. I fought in Vegas, fought a lot of fights in Atlantic City and Philly, different parts of the country and overseas. And it's very tough to watch when you feel like you're going there, and if you do your job and you've worked hard, then you earn what you get. And so, and it seems like a lot of our conversations about this right now, and it's a shame because there's a lot of great fighters that should have the same opportunities. And no politics should be in the way of that.
Right.
But it is.
Example, Reggie was a great fighter. I mean, you have a lot. There's some great fighters that, that was dealt a bad hand. But we all agree it's a great sport.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember I fought when I was 18. I fought I had the privilege. My second pro fight, I fought my first in the Playboy in Atlantic City. My second pro fight, I fought out in Caesar's Palace. Guys, you would love this. It was 1 month. I left college. I think I was just ready to turn 19 years old. I flew out to Vegas to get a fighter ready. John Collins. He was fighting Robbie Sims, which is Marvin Hagler's half brother.
Yep.
And we flew out. we flew out to Vegas. I stayed out there for a month. I remember I grew up with 14 kids. There's 14 of us in a 2-bedroom house. I remember when I arrived in Vegas, I come into Caesar's Palace, and my trainer gives me the keys, and he said, "This is your room." And I went up to this condo, and it was bigger than my parents' house.
Wow.
And I thought I was going to be staying there with a bunch of boxers, but it was myself. I was like, I didn't know what to do with myself. It was really weird. So I ended up, I was there for a month. I ended up fighting on the undercard of Hagler, Mugabe, Hearns, and Schuler.
Oh.
And what an experience. But just talk about the conversation we had earlier. I fought a guy named Danny Boy Lindstrom, and I was training at the Golden Gloves gym. Freddie Roach was in camp with me, Virgil Hill, Leon Spinks. Michael Spinks lives in Delaware. I was a big fan of the Spinks brothers. And so I'm in camp with these guys. And then they said, well, I know you're getting John Collins ready, but we have a fight for you. So I ended up saying, who am I fighting? They said he was the Canadian amateur champion, Danny Boy Lindstrom. And so I ended up, they said, but you're going to have to gain weight to fight him. I'm not even 19 years old. I'm weighing 150, probably 156, 157. Lindstrom had to come down to 177, and I had to gain like 5 or 6 pounds to meet a weight. And I can't believe those are the kind of crazy things that happen in this sport. Like, I'm fighting a guy. He had me by like 5 inches. So I ended up fought him to a draw. It was, I think, a 6-round fight. I was excited to be on the Hagler, Mugabe, and Hearns and Schuler undercard. But when I look back at that, that's why I fight so hard for the health and safety of boxers. Things like that should never happen in this sport. And, I'm spotting this guy, literally, his carry-around weight's probably close to 200. And I'm spotting this guy this kind of weight, and I had to gain weight just to fight him. And so I'll never forget that experience. But like you were sharing about Reggie, some of these experiences that we talk about, I think the fans have to really encourage that we stabilize ourselves like other sports, get that national commission in place. Let's make some exciting things happen in boxing and make the best matchups ever.
Wow.
Salute on that. Hey, Dave, I put up your fight with James Toney in the background, kind of like we're sitting in a dive bar and we got the TV on, bro. I'm not gonna put the volume on, but he just nailed you. Oh,
I don't know why he was so mad. He hit me with that.
Damn, that looked like Joe Frazier taught him that one, bro.
Yeah, I don't know where that left hook came from, but I know I didn't like it. But I think what's interesting about that in fighting and boxing, as you know, when you're watching it, is that punch right there was a turning point in the fight because I didn't go down, and I really believe psychologically it was harder on Toney because, I was told not to get up high with him because he did hit hard. He caught me with it, and then he said, just keep on moving him backwards, punch him, push him, move him. Just keep on, and Hopkins was fighting exactly like Toney was here. And I just kept on using elbows, turning hard body shots, and just continuing the pressure of the whole fight. But I think that first round with that left hook was pivotal because I think you realized he knocked out none of the other big fighters with that left hook. And I think it was pivotal for me psychologically.
I mean, how did you tell yourself, I just took the best punch that James Toney has, and he's not going to hit me with that again. And you were in command for the rest of the fight, man.
Yeah,
pretty much.
It's interesting. I said, and to your point, well taken. That's exactly what I said at my corner. I said, hey, guess what? He's going to have a long night. And
there she go, the letter writer.
Yeah. So the when Hopkins was getting ready, Bernard was a big help because he'd watch tapes. He goes, Dave, don't stop punching. He likes to punch and rest. Don't give him a break. So about 8 years ago, I was at an event and Roy Jones came over to me. He said, yo, Dave, he said, let me tell you what, you were the best thing to happen in my career. He said, I watched your tape over and over when I fought James Toney on how to beat him.
Yeah. You know what I like what you're doing, Dave, too? You're staying close and you're smothering his work and getting your work off at the same time. Even though he's punching in spurts here and there, but like you say, you're making him work And Tony fights good when he's tired. I've seen him do that, but that was later on in his career. But you putting the pressure on him, backing him up. And I think you heard him with a hook about a minute ago. I saw you heard him with a hook.
Yeah, you're bringing up some key points. When we were in camp, we noticed that, that type of pressure, he'll get tired and then he'll throw a spurt of punches. But we literally, like Ali style, we trained to fight 15 rounds. That no matter what, I had so much left in my gas tank. And he hit me with some good shots, yeah. But the first round was probably the biggest shot. And what was interesting, when he hit me with that big left hook, it didn't stun me, which really shocked me. It put a cold feeling down my back. And I'm like, all right, that's the best you've got. I'm ready for that. And so it just that momentum. And then when he would get close, Marty Feldman said, just continue to throw your elbow in his chest like Hopkins would do and turn shots in, turn punches in. But, but again, I say this over James Toney. He knocked out Holyfield. He's had some big wins in his career.
Mm-hmm.
James Toney is Hall of Fame. I mean, he's a great fighter.
Was elected a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and man, like nobody gave you a chance in this fight. You were, I mean, this was the tail end. We talked about this earlier. I mentioned it. This was the tail end of free fights on over-the-air television. ABC's Wide World of Sports. It was a staple through the late 70s, the 80s, and this is when it stopped. This is when people started to get cable, and but this was something. Now you remember any of those Saturday afternoon fights when you were growing up that really
yeah, my brothers and all. It was. You remember they used to have like Curtis Parker. They had some great fights.
Oh, Curtis Parker. Oh,
Matthew Saad Muhammad.
Oh, the best.
I used to love those fights. They were all great fights.
Yeah, I think who did Curtis Parker lose to? Frank the Animal Fletcher.
And Frank the Animal Fletcher was trained also by Marty Feldman, my trainer.
You grew up in the Vatican City of boxing, bro. I mean, that was.
There were some tough days in Philly. I remember driving home sometimes. I remember I used to say to myself, if I really want it, this is where I need to be, even though it was painful. I mean, I remember going home at night. I said to my wife, man, I need a massage, because we would go to my in-laws' house and stay when I had a fight coming up, because I didn't want any temptations. And I was so disciplined with everything that I thought, I don't want anything. I don't want any handicaps going in that ring. I just remember the great opportunities that I had being in camp. And before he died, I got mentored by Joe Frazier, some great guys that I love. And so I was privileged to be put in environments of some great people that offered not only good emotional advice, but good strategy advice on going to the ring.
Did you see any tragedies growing up, going through boxing, where promising fighters got caught in drugs or alcohol? And I mean that was in a city. That must have been, and you were growing up right in that era, right in the 80s. Yeah. There was crack everywhere, heroin everywhere, pills everywhere. I mean, you see it take its toll on some great boxers.
Yeah, so sad but so true. Way too many. If I rattled off a list of names, you'll know their names through the sport, but Tony Serrero, Lenny LaPaglia, Philly fighters, Chicago fighters. These guys were warriors in their areas. They were known as the club fight warriors. They would be the 10-round main events, but you would rather see them than some of these TV fights, because they would fight the Curtis Parkers of the world and be toe-to-toe for 10, 12 rounds. And then substance abuse and other things, or what they call pugilistic dementia now stepped in, because they were just fighting. They were letting them fight like every couple months, and it just was too much on the brain, and it was so sad.
Wow.
You think that's maybe why fighters aren't fighting as often today, is because they see some of the damage that the fighters had of 20 years ago? Because fighters today, they fight so infrequently. It's like, man, why? Yeah. Look at this Fruit of the Loom underwear commercials over here. This is crazy. This is crazy stuff.
I thought that was me on there. But yeah, I would say to your question, yeah, it's the fighters today. My brother Nick, international matchmaker, he gets very
Mhm.
frustrated. He said because he said it is important that the windows that these guys fight are regular. He said I'm not saying every month, but what ends up happening is the fighters don't battle with as many issues, brain issues, and everything else if they're active and they're protected in the camp. They have the right gear and everything else. But he said some of these guys, he said they'll wait 8, 10, 12 months and they'll fight a fight. Their timing's a little off. They're getting hit more than they usually get hit. So he said on the other side, it could be a danger if you wait too long.
Yeah.
And so as you two see, I mean, you guys, the way you follow boxing, you see these fighters that their timing's off, and they would
Mhm.
never get hit like that if they were more active.
Well, they have this saying on YouTube. It's called "Iron sharpens iron," and
I
that's
love it.
but we don't see that anymore. We see
Mm.
we see a fighter have a good fight, even a mediocre fight, and then we don't see him again for 9 months, even a year. It's not uncommon today, but yet we still love this sport. We still follow this sport every day. I'm on YouTube. I'm listening to shows like this, just other people giving their opinions. I don't know why, because what they're giving us, because I come from the day where they gave us filet mignons, and now they're giving us bologna sandwiches, and they're charging us twice as much money for it. But I'm coming back and saying, may I have more, please? I mean, is that me, or is that just the way boxing
Yes,
is turned into?
I think too. And I always go back to the commission because I feel like if you you have to say, a lot of people agree with the Ali era where you had all top 10 or top 20 could beat anybody today because they came to fight. They didn't worry about the money. They came to fight. If you think about the Ali era, you don't want to just watch it on TV. You want to be at ringside. You had
Mm.
Ali, Frazier, Norton, Foreman, Lyle, the
Oh,
Crawford
Mm.
brothers.
oh,
I could go on and on. You had young Ernie Shavers. You had Chuck Wepner. And today, you would look at Chuck Wepner and say, you know what? Oh, he's no Ali. But then when you look at Chuck Wepner today, you would say, oh, he'd be competitive in the heavyweight division as a champion. But at least I do. I look at the fighters, and I'm a purist of the sport. And I look at it and say, you could look at the middleweight division, and you could do the same thing. You could go Hagler era. You could go Sugar Ray Robinson era. You had Sugar Ray Robinson. You had Carmen Basilia. You had Rocky Graziano.
mm.
You There were fights. Gene Fulmer. You would
Yep.
look in the history of boxing. You would want to be at ringside at these fights. And Cyclone Hart. And you think of some of these names. Those guys came to fight.
Yeah, those were certainly the days. You just mentioned somebody, and I want you to tell us a couple of stories about the Bayonne bleeder, Chuck Wepner himself, man, because
uh,
uh,
Mm.
I saw a few Chuck's fights, but when Don King was pushing him earlier, and then I remember the Ali and the Chuck Wepner fight. Why don't you tell us a couple of stories about Chuck? Because you told me you met him in
if you
person.
don't mind, I'd love to reminisce. So I'll tell you a couple stories. I'll tell you a story about Chuck. I'll tell you a story about my love of Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali. So
Ah,
I took a drive up to Bayonne, and then Chuck Wepner says, "Oh man, that's great. I watched your Tony fight. And I didn't know he watched the Tony fight, and I was like, I said, champ, man, some of your fights, I mean, he had blood everywhere, and I said, I don't know how you can see because so much blood, and just had a great sense of humor. So. And I'm sure you could tell the story better about because he says it all the time about his wife. But he said when he got the Ali opportunity, he said, I remember, oh man, I rocked Ali. And he said, and I got to my corner for the 8 count, and my trainer he said, oh man, he goes, I'm going to be the champ. And he's going on and on. And his trainer said, I think you just got Ali, man. And he said, I
Mm.
looked over the other corner, and there was Ali, and Ali went after him and finished him. And why don't you tell a story about his wife? Because he told me the same story. It was hilarious.
yeah, that was Chuck Wepner bought his wife a blue negligee before the fight, and he said, "You're wearing this tonight because you're going to sleep with the heavyweight champ of the world." And Chuck came back to the room after the fight, and she goes, "Hey, baby, is he coming here, or do I go to his room?"
That's cold right there.
Hey guys, you would love it. So I got to be I was close friends. Every Christmas, Marvin Frazier would call me and sing Happy Merry Christmas and Happy Christmas and all this. It was just so cute. So I got to be good friends with his dad. So Smoking Joe, I would go to Philly, and so I was in his condominium, and we were talking about like he signed all these gloves for like charities for me that we do fundraising for, and Smoking Joe was just awesome. So I said, "Hey, champ, would you come to Delaware and speak to our Boys and Girls Club? They were like elementary school kids. Well, the elementary school kids didn't know him but the parents and grandparents all wanted to be there to meet Joe Frazier. So Joe Frazier sits on this stool, and he lets all the kids are sitting in the front row, and they're all elementary school kids with missing teeth and all. It's so cute. And so he gives a speech about respecting your parents and being kind. He gives this big long speech. He goes, "Does any of you have any questions?" All the kids raised their hand. So he starts with the one kid, and he said, "Did you ever have a bloody nose?" And he said, "Oh yeah." And he gave that story. And he said, "Have you ever been knocked down?" He said, "Oh yeah, but not many times."
Mm.
And he says that story. Then the next kid said, "Did you ever fight George Foreman?" And
No.
Frazier looks at the kid, and he starts staring him down. And this little kid kept looking. They kept looking at each other. And then Frazier said, "Next question."
uh, no, Joe is he's a precious man. I watched when he made up with Ali when he went on. I think it was might have been a Dick Cavett show, and I mean those two. I'll bet right now they're probably jawing it out up in heaven together, man. That was
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, I tell you what. When I was in Vegas, and I got in the line to get Ali's autograph, and so my trainer said, "Hey, Dave's on." He said, "Dave's on the undercard." So Ali had this. I bet you there had to be 100 people on the line waiting to get the autograph. Ali stands up. He comes around behind the table, and he goes nose to nose with me. You know how he likes to play. And he goes
oh,
nose to nose, and he said, "You're fighting this week." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "You going to win?" And I
Hmm.
said, "Yeah." He said, "You better."
Hmm.
Just real clean. You know how smooth he is. Oh, he
mm,
was. It was. And I said, only if I had a cell phone to do a selfie with him.
uh,
Where does time go? That was in 1985.
man, I saw him do an exhibition at the Providence Civic Center, and I think it was 1978 or 77, and there was a line. There was a line to get. He was giving autographed pictures away after I was leaving, and I didn't stay around and get one, and I could kick myself in the ass. It's one of these things in life where you say, "Man, I should have turned that way," but I went with my boys instead that way. And that's the last fighter that I'm going to say I was a fanboy for. He could do no wrong in my eyes. I love Muhammad Ali. I loved him as much as I love my father. So, so I
But
mean,
it's
uh,
what
Yeah.
great legends when and I remember Atlantic City, and then I would be at the private parties, and I was a kid with 14 kids. We never had anything. I mean, we were pretty poor. And I remember being in, and I was in a room, and there was Jake LaMotta, Raging Bull movie just came out. There was some of the greatest fighters in the world: Carmen
mm,
Basilia, Willie Pep, and then you see Cyclone Hart, all these big names. And I just remember in this room, just like, and I look back and said, only if I had a cell phone, even just had a camera to get pictures with these guys, because
mm,
it was such a treasure. And they all came up, and they were so humble. One thing I love about boxers is they're so humble. And for the most part, when you meet boxers, it's not usually what you see, and they've come up the hard way, and they really appreciate. Many of them appreciate what they have, and I know in my own life, guys. When my life, my where my career pivoted is, I remember I'd go to Champ's Gym, and it's a legendary gym in Philadelphia, and I remember some of the guys would have calendars with like naked women, and in my Christian faith, it always really bothered me spiritually. And I remember when a pastor called people up front and said, "If you want to stand out and you want God to move in your life, then you got to move in His life." Anyways, I remember going to the altar, and I remember going to the gym after that, and I posted next to those pictures. I posted Bible verses. I could do all things through Christ who strength. I started posting things, and I said, "You know what? I got to get off my cruise ship and get on the battleship." And I remember putting scriptures on the wall of the gym, and within weeks, and I always share this, within weeks, God honored it by my first championship, and said, I remember my manager called me saying, hey, guess who's fighting on USA TV Network for the IBC Championship against Eddie Hall? You just got an offer, and that was within weeks. So, and I heard you say iron sharpens iron. That was one of my verses. I knew the Lord put me in Philadelphia because iron sharpens iron. I was settling into mediocrity in gyms in Jersey at the time, and when I went to Philadelphia, it wasn't by accident that all of us were coming up at the same time. That God put me in a camp with Bernard Hopkins, Prince Charles Williams, Stevie Little, and Bam Bam Hines, and Tyson would come into our camp once in a while. We didn't spar with him; he's much bigger than us. But I remember at camp, we were in a two townhomes, row houses that were connected, that were gutted out, and the windows were plywood. We had kerosene heaters. The joke in the gym was nobody bump into the kerosene heaters while we worked out because it stunk so bad. And
I lived with him for a few years.
yes, you'll appreciate it, right? But that's where, but I when I talk to young people, I said in my life, God's done and continues to do miraculous things. And where is He in your life? Because you can have the best physical skills, the best mental skills, but man, if you're not spiritually connected, there's a void there.
Now, I'm just going to change the subject for a second. I want to get right back on that. But after this fight, I see this glove with a hole in it over there. What's that all about?
So, in that round, they stopped it, and it was, I think, almost 6 minutes, 5.5, 6 minutes, and so that became controversy after the fight because usually what happens is that when there's a tear in the glove, when something happens in a fight, something's defective, they put it in a bag. They're supposed to actually, the commissioner's supposed to hold it until it's inspected. But in that fight, both of my gloves were removed in the fight, and they don't know where the gloves are. But at the time, if you watch that round was a momentum round for me. Tony was leaning against the ropes, totally exhausted, and that was our goal, is to just try to burn him out because, we knew Tony
He took you lightly. Everybody took you lightly. Nobody thought you would even survive that first round, man. The ringside announcers, Walu and
Dan Deerdorf.
Yeah,
they were asking each other, does he belong in the ring with James Toney? Do you think this fight's going to last long? And they're trying to talk you up as much as they can to sell it more, to sell the fight more. But bro, I mean, like you said, man, Tony, how did that glove get a hole in it like that? I've never seen a hole like that in a glove.
Mm-mm.
Well, and that's I know a conversation earlier too about the letter, and just so many things that happened that really, James Toney and I were the combatants. So by no means, people say, I look forward. Matter of fact, the Hall of Fame in October, they asked James Toney and I, it's not out in the public yet, but they asked James, this will be the media interview that I'm sharing this, but they asked James Toney and I if we would do karaoke together.
Oh, wow.
And so I said, you know what? It's been 30 years. I do karaoke with James Toney anytime. And by the way, I don't have any problem with James Toney. It's James Toney has nothing to do with what happened in that fight. James Toney goes out. He's a warrior. James Toney had fights go against him. I mean, he's had issues in the past.
Yeah, unfortunately, you boxers, you're the pawns in this chess game.
Yeah, that's well said. And that's I think it's frustrating for a lot of fighters. No matter, I don't care if you go in somebody's hometown, the best fighters should always come out because it doesn't do the sport any good.
That's true. Dave, I got a question. Why they don't have fights in Atlantic City anymore?
Yeah, it's been disappointing. My nephew, Jonathan Diego, served 3 years as district attorney in Atlantic City. And we always talk about that because during his heyday, Atlantic City was really a stopping ground. And I think a lot of it has to do the preference of the promoters on where they want to host the fights. And so I feel like that right now, my brother Nick does a few fights in Atlantic City. And but yeah, I think that the TV networks, I'm seeing a lot of the fights going overseas, England and some of these other countries, because a lot of the fighters are from foreign countries and they're drawing 75,000-100,000 people to a stadium, they told me. And that's what I've heard. But you're right. I mean, I noticed the Staples Center in New York, they're attracting a lot more fights than Atlantic City right now, it seems like.
I want to shout out my brother Carl Hansen out there from Australia. I see a lot of fights going on in Australia now too. Australia seems to be a hotbed for boxing.
Atlantic City, I loved Atlantic City. To me, the environment, it was literally an hour and a half from my home. I mean, it was like home turf for me. And
Oh yeah.
and this situation was Tony, but I had a lot of big wins in Atlantic City and all the casinos, so I have a lot of great memories. And we used to have 6, 8 buses coming in from Delaware and Philly and different areas of Jersey. And so, as we know, the fight fans, as you appreciate when you watch the fights, you know, that's what I loved about Philly too. When I fought at the Blue Horizon in the convention center,
Oh, the
when
Blue Horizon.
the
Yep.
fans, they don't care if you're white, black, or pink. If you don't fight hard in Philly, they boo you.
Mm-hmm. Now, how about the destruction of the Blue Horizon and Joe Frazier's gym? Wouldn't those have been great places to renovate and just? I mean, Joe Frazier's gym. What a museum that would have made. It would have been a mecca for people traveling to Philadelphia, boxing fans anyway. I don't know. We just don't seem to appreciate the treasures of boxing.
I never understood that. Yeah, with Rocky, where you really have a real life Rocky and Joe Frazier, and you would think that would be for years to come such a tourist attraction. Now I understand there's something I think in Louisiana for Muhammad Ali, and I'm like, that's smart. You know, I think they converted Ali's childhood home into a museum. I am sure that's amazing. That's like Elvis. You know, and to me, that would have been ideal. And the Blue Horizon is another great example. The
Mm.
legendary fights that the Blue Horizon had it's incredible that those two sites weren't converted into like different types of museums or tourist attractions.
Unbelievable. But see, this fight here, I guess somebody took it on a VCR because I see the commercials in the middle there, the
Yep.
Alka-Seltzer. But you know, we're very fortunate being on YouTube here, where we can pull up these fights of the past. We can converse with different live chats and I'm going to say legends like yourself, bro, because I don't know if anybody's been listening, but the things the changes that you made upon boxing, there's something that people, fans, especially fans like myself, we want to thank you, bro. I mean, you forego millions of dollars for your principles. And I think Marvin Hagler was the only fighter I've seen do that, but Marvin already had the millions. You didn't even make your million yet. But you had a principle, bro. You weren't gonna let the boxing world push you around. And that's a very honorable thing, Dave. That's like something that's unprecedented, bro.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. I just feel like we're in a good position where the fight fans have, I think, they do it with their pocketbook, and I say boxing fans, it could be any sport, but the pocketbook to me is what's key. And I've said this for years. Every fight fan deserves the best fights, and also the safety side of it is no one wants to see somebody get in the ring and get smoked. And there's where my brother Nick's very sensitive when he makes matches, that he's got a gift that he knows how to make these matches, that when you watch a fight, that the fans getting stimulated because the matches, he finds a guy that's a really good banger, and then he'll find somebody that's a really good boxer with angles and really hard to hit. He'll match these fights up, and they make for such interesting fights and entertaining fights. And my friends always say, man, your brother, and it minimizes the knockouts. And knockouts still happen on his cards, but you're watching a 4-round fight and a 10-round fight, and every fight just about are competitive.
All right.
And that, to me, the fans love that.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the fights, this is going to be a quick one here. Errol Spence or Bud Crawford?
Oh, man, you got me on that one. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to lean towards Crawford for probably sentimental reasons, but it's going to be a heck of a fight.
Oh, I cannot wait. Do you think it's going to happen?
If promotions don't get in the way of it.
Because I'm hearing all kind of, especially today, they're saying how, but they went in separate directions again today, and they're talking about Errol Spence and Keith Thurman.
That makes it. I like that matchup. But those are the kind of matchups I would enjoy watching. To me, but we're talking earlier about commissions and all that. There's where the fighters, even the fighters, to me, they should not have a say. There's a problem here. I think polls should be taken, an independent commission where polls are taken, and the fans. I mean, you didn't see Ali handpick anybody. Ali said Ali would fight anybody.
Yep.
Anybody.
And that they say what made him the greatest is because of that. There should. I don't believe a fighter, a manager, a promoter should have a say on who the fight should be. The promoter can help make the match, but the national commission should be the one to approve it.
Okay, how about the middleweight fight coming up? Triple G or Canelo Alvarez?
If you asked me this a couple of years ago, I would say Triple G. But I'm wondering if I'll put like a preface here by saying if Triple G is an old Triple G now, and I'm going to take Alvarez because I wonder if Triple G has that one fight left in him. That's watching his recent fights. I started seeing some decline, and I'm going to lean towards Alvarez.
And what do you think of the middleweight division today? We got 4 champions. We got Charlo. We have Triple G. We have who I can't even remember some of the other. That's what Triple G's unified. And who's unified. Who's the WBO?
Andrade.
He's okay. So it's in a turmoil right there. Who do you think? Who do you think's the strongest link and the weakest link in the middleweight division today?
Well, to your question, I would say taking a picture taking a snapshot of even a few years back, Roy Jones, Bernard Hopkins, these guys were up in age, and they were still taking the big fights. They were still trying to unify the middleweight championship or the super middleweight championship, and I just feel like a lot of times that's a lot of these guys will win a title and then they'll go down to the top 10 and see what kind of paydays they can get. I think there's where that those four need to have a unification, and to me that's where the fans get excited, because I think they would be some good fights if the matches are made properly. Have a preliminary fight where you have 2 of them fight each other and the other 2 fight, and then they unify the middleweight division. And to me, there's where I look at those 4 fighters, at least 3 of them that I like. That I look at those 4 fighters as a whole to be forced to have to unify the title, and then I think you're going to get some excitement in the middleweight division.
Mm-hmm. Because I know you came right after the Marvin Hagler era, and those were, that was to me the best middleweight I've ever seen in person on television. We can go back, we can argue the Lamadas, like you mentioned all those cats, the Sugar Ray Leonard, the Basilios, but man, Marvin Hagler, that was a tough act to follow. You got to admit.
Marvin Hagler was Marvin Hagler literally was in the lighter weight classes. I always liked Julio Cesar Chavez, but Marvin Hagler was my favorite fighter. And you guys probably don't know this, but when you watch this fight, I'm left-handed. I fought right-handed.
Oh, wow.
That's why I loved Hagler. Precise. How could you not love? The way he prepared for fights, the way he broke people down. You had to love the guy that was just an all-around fighter. That every fight he would find weaknesses. He was like Hopkins. He'd find weaknesses in people and just break them down, and he would not back off. And you got to love a guy like that with not only the conditioning, but Hagler every single fight. Nothing broke him. He would always stay disciplined through the whole fight, and he would dissect people and then finally break them down.
Yeah, man. Marvin's another one. In fact, there's a guy from the Philippines. His name is J. Crew, I think. I'm bad with these internet names because everybody uses these crazy names on there. But anyway, he's from the Philippines, and he's doing a Marvin Hagler show tomorrow. He asked me if I could jump on there and talk about him, because Marvin's another one. He's right. He's from Brockton. I'm from right around Providence. We're only 20 miles away. And man, Marvin Hagler. He just seemed to, like you said, I can see you. I can see you styling after Marvin Hagler, just being very conservative, moving forward. Keeping that chin. That chin is almost touching your chest, bro. He
Yeah,
can't.
I learned a lot. And no, you're right. I learned a lot. You watch Hagler's tapes, then, and Church, you said something earlier too. That with that smothering, I was. Did I get caught with some good shots? Yeah, but be just constantly pushing him back, and him not ready for that really smothered a lot of the big punches that Tony likes to get leverage on. And if Hagler had a way of doing that with his shoulders side to side, and Hopkins, I think Hopkins probably learned a lot from that too, because if you watch Hopkins, I used to get mad at him at camp. He always called me poker face. He said, Dave, you never show any emotions. I said, because I know you, Bernard. If I showed emotions, you'd play off of it. But Bernard had a way of hitting you from different angles. He'd step over. He'd have you all tangled up, and he'd hit you with shots. And Hagler had a way of doing that. It still kept his composure, but was able to break people down.
And also, Dave, I'm watching this fight. I noticed something. Did you train in this fight not to get hit with uppercuts, because Tony would throw uppercuts and you would like lean to the side and he couldn't hit you with that shot?
Shoulder, yep, yeah, good catch. Yeah, I was doing shoulder to shoulder with him. I would roll down to. If you notice, I'd start to square up, and then as soon as you go to punch, I would roll, and I roll my right shoulder in the center of his chest, then my left shoulder in the center of his chest to give him nothing but angles. And he started to lean on me, and then I pull up once in a while. I had to be careful, but he, once I got him flat-footed, from that tricks. When I got him flat-footed, I felt, even with his uppercuts, I felt that I could feel the power, like in the mid rounds, leaving him, and so I knew that type of pressure was paying off. I think his gas tank was low.
And he's younger than you are in there. What is he? He's 23 years old too, right?
I was 25. He was 23.
And man, James Toney had a tough time making middleweight. I talked to him one time on a show, and he loved to eat. He couldn't go buy a Burger King without pulling in the parking lot. He would put on 30, 40, 50 pounds between fights. It was the way he said it. It was just the way he lived, man. But man, for him to make middleweight, that must have been hell and high water for him to carry that weight off, bro.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you see some guys like Roy Jones had nice big shoulders and everything else, and so Tony's build, he was shorter than I was, and so maybe it was like you said, maybe bad food habits. I was very conscientious. I brought a new athletic nutritionist in when I was training, and it was when I was a kid. We were boxing. A lot of the equipment. I mean, a lot of the food that we ate were like red meats and all that. Then when a nutritionist came in, he said, "Hey, Dave, you got to get off the red meats. That takes 3 days to digest." He said, "I'm going to put you on fish, chicken, and turkey." And so we started. And then he said, "If you want your spaghetti and all that, my Italian heritage." So then. With the spaghetti, he said, that's fine. Just don't overdo it. But he said that'll get you, the carbs and all. So we ended up. He was. I remember I was always on the money for my weigh-ins.
Yeah, a lot of fighters are saying now that's the missing link. Now they're learning nutrition. As of before, it was when you got into camp. That's when the nutrition program began. Now they're doing it all year long. They're realizing you don't want to go into a camp and use the first 6 weeks as a fat camp. You want to go in there and in condition, and they're learning the power of food today. And you knew that a long time ago.
Before all these the nutritionist, the guy that was handling me. I mean, he was ahead of his time. I feel like when you some of the things that he did, and he was training like Olympic runners and all that. But I did know I always like. In my closet, in my bedroom, for example, when I'd sleep at night, some of the things that would wake me up in a nightmare was me going into the ring not in shape. And I had, if you want to ask me if I had a fear in my life, that was one of my fears. I just knew I'd wake up in the morning, and guys, it's pretty neat. So I would go out and run, and so I would run like 10 telephone poles and sprint 2. just like I did everything thinking about I was fighting. So, like disperse. I'd get a bunch of punches off, slow up. So I would jog 5 telephone poles. I would sprint 3. I'd walk just like I was hopping. After a minute in between rounds, I would have a seat. So I would walk for 2 telephone poles. Then I would start jogging again. So I would run 5, 6, 7 miles that way. I would do interval jogging and training just like a regular fight. Like, all right, I'm gonna pick my pace up, and I tell these young boxers, I'm like, you everything you do, you should be emulating the fight. Everything that you go through.
So my friend Carl Hansen asked you a question. You must know if you've ever heard of Jay Opatita, cruiserweight.
Obakita was I've heard of Obakita's name. What years?
I don't know, Carl. I think he's a cruiserweight today.
Oh, today.
I think so. I'm not. My memory is fried, bro.
No, you know why? It might sound familiar because my brother Nick calls me about all these fighters,
Mm-hmm.
and so the name's familiar. So it could be today because my brother Nick handles a lot of matchmaking all over the world.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's
That's
so
why I
many,
probably
there's
heard
so
of
many fighters out there. The thousand, and being a matchmaker. Let me shout out a couple of people that came in here today. That I didn't shout out yet, man. Let's see. I had Mr. Mechanical stopping in here. Thomas Jones, man. Salute, brother. Thank you for coming by. We're talking to the legendary Dave Tiberi over here, man. Mr. Pads, I saw you earlier. I didn't get a chance to shout you out because I'm as nervous as a hooker in church, bro. So you're gonna have to forgive me over there. Mr. Mechanical, PH Big Dog, Kui, man. Thank you for coming in. And man, it's good stuff. Great stuff, man. All right, man. Let's get right back into it. Matchmaking now. What involves a matchmaker? Do you go out and contact other fighters, or is this done on paper and you submit it to a promoter? I've always wondered how matchmaking works.
So with my brother Nick has promoters that Nick will put the whole fight card together for them, and they'll say if they want 6 fights or 8 fights or 10 fights on a card, and it's usually based on a number of rounds as well. So we had one card he did a few years ago. It was pretty cool. It was a lot of young, like Golden Glove champions and all, and it were like 4 to 6 round fights. But usually the traditional fights, Nick will do like a main event, like a 10-round main event, or a 12-round state championship, international championship, or national championship. Then he'll do a 10-round semi wind-up. Then he'll do like an 8-round, 6-rounder, and a couple 4-rounders. And
now, do you have to take into consideration the different promotions you're working with? Or do you does he work like within PPC? You're working with their fighters, putting matches together, or do you just take from the best fighters in the world and try to get it together?
Usually, a lot of the promoters they'll have local boxing managers in their area, and so if it's a local fight in New Jersey, Delaware, Texas, or anywhere in the country, then they'll try to get as many local fights to draw the local crowd to the arena. And so usually Nick has a pool of fighters all over the world, so they'll work on bringing in big names, as a draw during a fight. Nick might get an Olympian that's going to come in and fight an 8-round fight because they want to keep the Olympian turn pro and it's going to keep busy. So usually the promoter also has a number of their own fighters signed that Nick has to make matches for.
Is Mario your dad or your older brother?
Mario, on the fight, that's my brother Mario. Yeah,
man,
he's not as good looking as me.
None of my brothers are as good looking as I am either.
Yeah, forget about boxing. That's what I said. I should have gotten a model, and if I look better.
Man, I'm going to say one thing, man. You're extremely articulate. You look like you're about 35 years old, bro. I don't know the water you've been drinking. I want to get my hands on some of that. But I'm noticing. This was done with a VCR, and I'm looking at the commercials in between there. I'm seeing Fixodent. I'm seeing Grecian 45. I'm seeing, AARP commercials. What are they shooting for? They must have known we're going to be watching this 30 years later.
Yeah, they knew the 3 of us were going to be coming back 30 years later to watch it.
Who'd have thunk it? And we're not only watching it, but we're getting commentary with one of the major participants in this fight, if not the major participant, man.
Thank you so
Incredible
much.
stuff, bro. Incredible stuff. I'm gonna keep this and put it under my pillow, and I hope when I'm gone they can show this again. And man, this is just our love for boxing. There we go, the Geritol. What else can be more?
Oh wow.
Oh man. Hey guys, I'll be honest. After a few of my fights, I needed all that.
Mm.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trick. I'll hold this one in.
Yeah, Dave, I got a question. This, you know what? I thought boxing took a back seat when they put Ronda Rousey on the front cover of the Ring magazine. I mean, how are we gonna react when sooner or later, and I think it's coming, they're gonna put Jake and Logan Paul on the front of a Ring magazine? What do you have to say about that? I think it's coming.
Yeah, and there's where I really believe you, myself, a lot of us, and those that are on this broadcast listening to us, we as fight fans, I think, really have to. And I hear they do this in the UFC. The fans, they like to demand who they want, and so when they start doing that, purists like me, it's a turnoff. I really want to see the best of the best, and there's a lot of great fighters out there. I'd like to read more about and hear more about, and I think Ring's been so reputable for so many years. I look at Ring, and I don't know how you guys feel, but I look at Ring magazine and some of these well-published magazines over the years. I'm thinking of the best of the best. I'm thinking of Hagler, Ali, Rocky Marciano. I'm thinking the best of the best. And to me, they've got to be careful on who they feature in the magazines, because it's not the National Enquirer.
Well, I mean, I grew up with Ring magazines. I had the lady who owned the magazine store. She got tight with me, and she would call me up whenever the magazines came around. Ring, International Boxing, KO, every one of them. I don't care as long as it said boxing on there, she would give me a call. And she asked me one day, she goes, "You want me to just put them all together? I'll call you once a month." I said, No, Mrs. Marshall. When these magazines come out, this is the way we got our news. This is an invitation to boxing, basically. There was no cable, there was no internet. It was Ring magazine. And man, I'm looking. James looks like he's got some cramps in his legs or something in this round. I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth, but man.
No, yeah, he, they had tape off they had to cut tape off my gloves, and it looked like James started cramping up, and I remember Marty Feldman in the corner yelling, "Put the pressure on, just keep the pressure on."
Condition, yeah.
And what's interesting is what I loved, and when I talked to Joe Frazier, he used to say the same thing. If something's working, don't change it. How many times do you guys watch a fight? Like in this fight here, my trainer said, "I don't care if you see Tony backing up, you see Tony, do not stop what's working." He said, "We're not going to change any styles." And even with the last round, I fought the last round like I fought the second and third round. I mean, it's just continued to be on his chest because he's still dangerous. And so that's where you can get really hurt.
Did you go in there with more than one plan? Like if, let's say, the style you're using now wasn't working, did you have a plan B, a plan C, or was it simply, if this doesn't work, I'm in trouble?
I trusted my camp because everybody, once my camp came into agreement, we all did this with each other.
And
Marty Feldman, there's Marty, and Bernard Hopkins, when everybody said, "Hey, this could work," and we spent a few months just working over and over every day on backing him up. We were going to stick with it till the end. And then they told me, they said, "Dave, look, it worked in camp. You got to believe in yourself to do this. Just stay on his chest. Don't give him breathing room. He's most dangerous when you get on the outside. And so stay into a fight plan." And I'm a smart enough guy to realize that if something's working, I'm not going to change it. But yeah, to your question, if James came in with a different plan that I had to alter my plans, I really felt that my heart of hearts, watching his tapes, that my conditioning, I had to focus on what I was good at, which was my chin and my conditioning. And I'm an active fighter, throwing a lot of punches, and so it seemed to pay off.
Man, I I want to get into this the decision of this fight, because this was the I know you're strong enough to watch this again, but when Michael Buffer, when he didn't say "and the new," I know you mentioned you lost your faith in God for a second there, and bro, I mean that must have been that's when the walls came tumbling down. Was it? Describe that feeling that's going to happen in just a few minutes here, just a few seconds.
All right. Yeah. So I'll let you watch this first, so that way you can get a kind of a view.
Maybe I can put the volume on there and not get in too much trouble. We can kind of talk over a little bit.
115 to 112 for James Toney. Mike Garcia scores about 115 to 111 for the winner by split decision, and still IBF middleweight champion of the world, James Toney.
Bizarre stuff. Was that?
Well, it's interesting. Like I just remember, like, I questioned God. I said, but it's interesting. Right after that, my wife doesn't remember. We were walking out of the ring, and my wife said, maybe this is not your plan, maybe it's God's plan. She doesn't remember saying that, but I said it must have been a spiritual encounter, because I remember walking out of the ring, and it truly was, to look what happened after that fight with the Senate investigation. The whole sport was literally flipped upside down, and I was on a ton of Sports Illustrated, all these national shows talking about how we could straighten out the sport of boxing. So I think that awareness, that if that's what it took to change the sport, and I was and I was used as a vehicle to do that, then I think it paid off.
Man, I just hope it just continues going forward, because it seems like right now boxing's as bad as it ever was, bro.
Yeah, that's so disappointing.
It is, man. It is. And let me get. I know we're going to get back to the melee in the ring here, and right now they're showing a commercial. I can only imagine what must have been going on live then. But how about today? How about today, David? How's life today? And you training any kids around? You helping kids around? You still living in Philadelphia? What's going on with your life today?
So I still live about 30 minutes from Center City, Philadelphia. I live in Delaware, and Bernard Hopkins will tell you the story. I convinced Bernard to move to Delaware, where I grew up here, and Bernard lives like 2 miles behind me, here in Delaware. He's in town. He reaches out to me once in a while. He's in and out of town a lot, but yeah. So I'm very active, not only in my church ministry, but I'm also very active. I'm on a state board of the Boys and Girls Clubs here in Delaware. We have over 40 sites. We serve over 36,000 kids, and we are located in very at-risk areas where there's crime and there's violence, and we're making a major difference. I'm on the advisory board of our local hospitals here, as well as Easter Seals, dealing with special needs. And so I serve on a number of different boards, and I really enjoy that, because in Delaware, you can make it's a smaller state, so you can really make an impact of helping others. And I do a lot in the different communities here, and we're pretty blessed here. We come together when there's a need, and and so my brother Nick and I talk about boxing all the time, and it's a lot of fun. So we've been working with the police athletic leagues here in Delaware to return boxing to our police athletic league programs.
Yeah, man. I wish these kids today would pick up the gloves and put down the guns. I believe that's one of the sayings out in Philadelphia. And
Yeah.
and then look at that young kid in there, man. 12 rounds with James Toney. Looks like he just got out of the high school prom, man. What's going on?
You got to tell my wife that one.
Hey, bro. Maybe I smoke too much weed, but everybody I look at, maybe I live back in time. But man, this is just great stuff. And look at this. Oh my God, you can read your lips, bro. You yelled it right out there, man. Oh my God, that's like waking up. Does that nightmare did that stay with you for a while, or did you give it up?
Well, not many people ask me that question, but it's a very interesting question because I remember throwing my sweat gear on, and a couple times while the Senate hearings were going on, and I was getting offers, and it was a number of fighters, like I said, Roy Jones. They were giving me all these different offers, and of course, multiple rematches with Tony. And I just remember one day I threw my sweat clothes on and I went for a run, and I remember not really having that fire in my belly that I always had, and that probably concerned me more than anything else. And that was one of the days I told my wife, thank God she was very supportive and behind me, because she could have been easily saying, "Yeah, listen, let's take the money. It's possibly $3-4 million or more," but she stood by me during this very difficult time, and I just remember coming back from that run and saying, this, God must have something much bigger. So that whole situation that happened in that fight, there was no way that man could have wrote that script. U.S. Senator Bill Roth, who launched the investigation, the U.S. Senator, was the only body in D.C. that could investigate that fight, was the Subcommittee on Investigations. That was ran by U.S. Senator Bill Roth from Delaware, who thought that at ringside was Thomas Hearns, who was really disappointed, was Donald Trump, who owned a casino, and he shut his casinos down. I couldn't have wrote a better script for the people involved that happened to be there than what God wrote on this. And then Senator Joe Biden, who now is our president, Senator Joe Biden in Delaware joined with Senator Roth and Senator John McCain to strengthen Senator J.C. Watts. I think he was from down south. All of them stood by this when they saw the fight. Some didn't see it live; they watched it on tape. They all joined together to launch the work on a Senate investigation, which led to the hearings. And then ultimately, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, that it led to the 10 years later, President Clinton signing the Ali bill to take boxing on a different trail. And like you said earlier, it's a shame that boxing still needs the support of, I really believe, a national commission for us to get it on track. But all those things to say that one fight, that one day, all those pieces of the puzzle were in place to launch the investigation that led to a bill that brought a spotlight on boxing, and not in a good way, but hopefully it should have been a good way where good things should have came out of it.
Yes, sir, man. Yes, sir. And maybe little shows like this, if people can share them out there and replay them again, and then you're hearing from, this is the guy who said, "F boxing, man, F boxing. I'm done with it." And he went on to champion boxing, to champion the cause for the boxer, so they wouldn't be caught in the same situation he was in, man. Just such a good time up here with you, man. And I don't want to get redundant and start asking the same things. And I've had you here for an hour and a half. It was great having your time here, Dave, man. I appreciate it so much, brother. And let me shout out a couple other people that came in. My brother Big Duke 24 Sports, man. We do a show, Fourth Quarter Talk, on Friday nights. We talk about like we're just talking about tonight: nutrition, training, health, staying young, man, beating that Grim Reaper, because I got a few years on you, Dave, and you look about 20 years younger than I do, bro. But you're gonna see once you turn 60, it's gonna be a little tough for that uphill climb, man. But you're on the right path, man. You're doing it right, and God bless you. God bless my brother Big Duke. Punching Bag Skunk. That's Greg Towns, man. Former light heavyweight boxer from Providence, Rhode Island. He's Providence, man. I don't know if you ever heard of him, Dave, but he was fighting back in the early 2000s, but great guy, man. And we're talking about boxers getting together. They just got together up in the Bronx, man. It was a Iran Barkley function, and Tim Witherspoon was there. Greg Towns got it all on film. He was there. Larry Holmes, Roberto Duran, Jerry Cooney, Ray Mercer. It went on and on, one great to another, from one great to the next. And man, it just it was like that. We missed going to those the big testimonials for Robinson and Foreman, but they're happening today, man. That's why I got to get my ass off the couch and I got to pay attention. My brother Craig is gonna send me, let me know when these things are happening, because man, I don't want to say I miss these things. And however long I'm going to be here, I just want to say, man, I saw these greats, and like even right now, I talked to a great, and man, thank you so much for that, brother. Fist
Well,
bump to you.
thank you, and I tell you, those that are listening, that are on this broadcast with us, that are listening, I want to encourage you. I left boxing at my peak when I was just starting to make money and doing what I needed to do, and so if there's something in your life that you've walked away from, or you need to walk away from. I ended up, fortunately, I looked at I used that championship mindset, and I had a TV studio for over 20 years. I did a TV show. I was producing. I was hosting a show. We were producing TV commercials, and then 16 years ago, I transitioned, and we have a security company now, and we feed about 3,500 cameras, security cameras, into our video monitoring center for businesses and all. We've helped solve 3 murders. So a lot, so it's not the end. Something in your life that's going on right now, whatever fight you're in right now, I'm just want to encourage you that guess what? God might have other plans for you. You need to let go and let God, because I know that's what I did in my life. When I let go, it was hard. I was at the peak of my career against James Toney, and getting all the offers to walk away from a sport that I love so much and so hard to do. But I felt like it was the right time, the right season, because I really believe I had a bigger fight, which was cleaning up the sport and making it better for everybody. And then I was blessed in my home state here with my businesses. And so whatever you do, don't stop.
Man,
Don't let anybody stop you.
you're truly fighting a good fight, my brother, and continue it. And anything that I can do to help you, my brother, please stay in touch with me. It's been a pleasure having you on here. And I know, and I don't know if anybody who's talked to James Toney live like this one-on-one, man, it was a pleasure. And I hope everybody appreciated it. And Trick Nolte, man, for bringing James up here, for bringing Dave up here. I'm so used to. I'm watching James Toney, and you guys are almost interlocked in fate, bro. It's like you can't mention one without the other right now. And man, thank you so much, and God bless you, my brother.
Yeah, you too. Great job, guys. Keep up the good work and keep boxing out in the forefront, because we know how great of a sport it is, and there's a lot of great fighters out there, and we want to make sure that the fight fans get the best fights.
For sure, my brother. Peace be with you,
And
man.
yeah, peace be with you. And anytime, I enjoyed it. I love the opportunity again. So thank you. Thank you, Trick.
God bless. God bless, man. Man, that was a pleasure. That was so much fun. Let me let me throw something on here. I didn't have the music on because I wanted to keep here we go. Doesn't matter how I'm being talked to over here. I can be doing my thing, but man, D Style, thank you so much for coming up here, my brother. And any of you guys out there, I didn't mention all you guys have channels. Please drop your channels in there, because I'm on D Styles every Monday night, man. He does Afterburn and Afterburn. I don't even remember the name of the fucking show, but man, I love doing it. And we have we talk about real boxing up there, and we just had we talked to Dave Tiberi, and I've been watching boxing for a lot of years, man, and I've been waiting to listen to Dave Tiberi ever since that controversial decision. He never fought again, and I never saw him speak publicly again. And I thank God for that. And I always say, man, you guys know that I God bless everybody, man. I God bless every morning when I get up out of bed. But if anybody, we're all gamblers in this boxing world, and nobody's going to tell you God exists or nobody can prove it. Nobody comes back. It's a 50-50 bet, man. Take the gamble, bro. It'll do you no harm. But anyway, man, I'm gonna end this on a joke. I heard a funny joke today. I said if I don't tell this, it's probably not gonna get told. And this is a keeper. So I mean, this dude's coming out of a bar, right? He's got his keys and he's looking around. He can't find his car. He's like, my car's gone. And he flags a cop down. He says, officer, somebody stole my car. And the cop says, where was your car? He says, it was right at the end of this key. And the cop says, man, you're going to have to go into the station, make a report on this. And he goes, before you go, zip up your fly. And the guy looks down and he goes, and they stole my girl too. So anyway, man, Bruce Gass, great show. I'm out of here. Thank you so much for coming in, man. Peace and God bless.